Welcome everybody for this new episode of 5000 Years of War. I'm the Archivist. Don't forget to like and subscribe to help the channel grow. Before seeing together some Hittite adventures and how Egypt liberated itself from the Hyksos, let's together do a quick focus on war chariots. The most ancient form of cavalry comes from the invention of the wheel, more or less when writing was invented as well at the very beginning of history. The first war chariots, with four full wheels, heavy and pulled by four onagers, cousins of the donkey, date back to the 27th century BC approximately. Over the course of centuries, they became two-wheeled with barrel wheels and lighter, most of the time pulled by two horses. In general, two men were carried on the chariot, one driver and one warrior, javeliner or archer, but sometimes, like in Assyria or Hatti or even China, with 3 or 4 men, with shield bearers, then on heavier chariots pulled by up to 4 horses. These engines were fast, up to 30 kilometers per hour, almost 20 miles an hour, and could harass enemy formations, deploy fighters on advantageous locations, or pursue routing enemies. Charges could then be massive, implying several hundreds of them, some showing scythe blades attached to the wheel hub to cut nearby enemy skulls. In China, during the spring and autumn period and the warring states, chariots could be arrayed by 5 in line, 5 of these groups forming a squadron, where spaces were maintained between each group so that maneuvers remained possible. They were mostly deployed on the flanks of the army and would charge once the enemy was vulnerable. But unless fear made opponents break, frontal charges were in truth impossible, as horses usually don't charge against obstacles, and the vehicles were ultimately fragile. Although actual cavalry formations dethroned the war chariot as the noble weapon, it remained in use in some regions until our era. Romans saw some opposed to them in Britannia, nowadays Great Britain. Some magnificent chariots found in noble or royal tombs have survived to this day, showing incredible ornamentations. They were a mark of prestige, and privileged ones would go on parading or hunting on them, hunting requiring skills quite useful at war. This image here shows you a typical late Hittite chariot, while here you can see on a rock painting from the royal tomb of Kivik in Sweden another one possibly escorting or pursuing enemies or captives. So you see, it's not because we don't know what happened in other regions of the world that nothing happened there. Speaking of regions we haven't explored yet in this series of videos, because they didn't know writing by then, see this magnificent bronze dagger found in modern Germany, maybe of Celtic origins. Okay, we are set to continue our journey through the Bronze Age. We are now at 1647 BC. In Mesopotamia, the land between rivers in nowadays Iraq, Ami Saduqa succeeds to his father Ami Detana as king of Babylon. Saduqa will reign for about 20 years and will build a wall at the mouth of the Euphrates, which seems to indicate that the sea land right here has lost some strength. Let me just remind you that before that epoch, the Persian Gulf was right up until here, but water having receded, some land were uncovered, a region then called Sea Land. Quite some years later, in 1619 BC, the Hittites of King Hattusili I, living here, or his grandson Mursili I, his successor this year, take control of the Kebur River region on the upper Euphrates. The area, with the Hurrian cities of Urkesh and Nagar, was previously under Yamkad's influence. In 1600 BC, Mursili I the Hittite takes Aleppo and Yamkad from Hammurabi III, last king of the once powerful kingdom. The Hittite then proceeds on taking Ebla. of King Indilimgur, a city that could have been destroyed twice since we last met her a few centuries ago. Turka and Marie are also seized by Morsili, all this under the pretext of a call for aid from the tiny kingdom of Hana on the Euphrates. 5 years later, Morsili I goes as far as Babylon, right here, the land of the four quarters. Its last Amorite king, Samsu-Ditana, is overthrown and many prisoners are made there. Probably held by them in this conquest, Morsili I accepts to generously share the lands taken with the Kassites of southwestern Asia, more or less of these regions. They are famous for their horses and war chariots, and their king is none other than Tiptaxi of Hana. Kassites would rule over most of Babylonia for over 400 years. Of course, such a gift comes at a price. Morsili the Hittite expects a military assistance against the Hurrians roaming northward, adepts of the same battle tactics as the Kassites. Elam, from nowadays southwestern Iran, loses power from here on as it had interests with Amorite Babylonia. Let's jump to 1581 BC. In Egypt, the Hyksos invaders, who established their own 15th dynasty, have conquered Thebes under their pharaoh Kian, putting an end to the Egyptian 16th dynasty. However, they still face resistance from regional governors of the land, the nomarchs, who erect walls around their cities and assemble kinda private armies to defend their territories. Soon, an Egyptian 17th dynasty would arise, freeing Thebes and even retaking some places like Abydos. Maybe inner turmoil impaired Hyksos' capabilities. We will note, for a little of girl power in here, that before the end of the Egyptian 17th dynasty, a queen pharaoh called Iyahotep, maybe the spouse of Kamose, will be praised as a warrior queen, pacifying Upper Egypt, so these environs, against the rebels and pursuing deserters of her armies. Say hi in the comments, please, history girls. And what do you think of Iyahotep? Would it be a pretty name for your daughter? Okay, back to business. Between 1575 and 1550 BC, Nubians of Kerma, located south of Egypt, attack Egyptians from the south, then, in alliance with the Hyksos. They cause dire devastations. Once they will be liberated from the Hyksos, spoiler, sorry, the Egyptians will of course want to make the Nubians pay for this. Here are some bone and copper daggers from the Nubian land of Kerma. 1560, the Hittite Old Kingdom, despite the alliance with the Kassites of Agum II, ruler of Babylon, Mari, and Hana, has to face a perilous enemy, the Gasgas, barbarians come through northern Anatolia. They attack the lands of Hentili I, successor of Morsili I, whom he had assassinated. Over the Gasgas come Hurrian revolts as well in these regions. Hattusa, the Hittite capital, despite a new wall erected by Hentili, will be plundered several times in the next 150 years by the Gasgas. Hentili I is soon assassinated by his brother-in-law Zidenta, who is in turn murdered by his son Amuna. What a family! Around 1550 BC, Hyksos of the 15th dynasty, under their pharaoh Apope I, give control of the lands north of Memphis, located here, back to the Egyptians. Pharaoh of the 17th dynasty, Sekenenreta, takes from Thebes the head of the rebellion, maybe initiated 10 years earlier by his father Senaktenreta against the Hyksos. Sekenenreta's sons, Kamose and Amose are important actors of this rebellion, and after his passing away, maybe during a skirmish or battle between the two sides, his mummy presenting a severe injury to the skull, they will bring this endeavor to its conclusion, taking the Hyksos capital in Egypt, Avaris. Mose would then proceed on besieging their bastion of Sharuhen near Gaza for 3 years. He will finally raze it to the ground. The brothers will also campaign in the south against Cushites in Nubia, who were still menacing Egypt's southern border. And so the Hyksos have been pushed back out of Egypt. Hooray! This Egyptian axe head showed them for good. Now, in the same time period, the Hittites under King Amunna, not helped by a severe drought, lose Arzawa in the west, Kitsuwatna in the south, and Zalpa, uncertain cities of Satiwara and Suluki and Adana, all this through revolts. Kanesh too, but this one is soon retaken. Amunna will be succeeded by Huzziya through violence. A generation later, Telepinu takes his turn on the Hittite throne after overthrowing Huzziya I, again a coup. Telepinu restores some order in the empire through some military victories and a lasting, although mildly efficient, alliance with Ishputashu, king of Kitsuwatna, against the Mitanni lying eastward and trying to steal some Hittite lands. Telepinu is seen as the last ruler of the Hittite Old Kingdom, and Hatti will soon enter its intermediate period. Then, in 1525 BC, we note the vanishing of the Halab kingdom, which had briefly succeeded to the late Yamkad, the region of Aleppo, after the departure of the Hittites from this land. It falls to Hurrian's assaults from Mitanni. In the same time, Ahmose I of Egypt, founder of the 18th dynasty, vanquisher of the Hyksos, first pharaoh of the New Kingdom, passes away. He reduced the kingdom of Kerma southward in Nubia and the Yuntu before taming two rebellions over there, one by Nubians, the other one by an Egyptian, maybe a local governor. Northward, he possibly took some land to Mitanni too. Amenophis or Amenhotep comes after him. He will push northward as well, reaching the Euphrates, but not consolidating on it. At this epoch, taking inspiration from the Hyksos, the army of Egypt now includes war chariots with two wheels and pulled by two horses, and some cuirass and blades, the curved kopesh. And here we have a beautiful example of a dagger with the name of Ahmose I written on it. 1521 BC. Mesopotamia, Babylonia, weakened, is effectively controlled by diverse peoples come from the mountains northward, notably the Kassites that are currently under their king Burnaburiash I. Reigning until the end of the century, this weird name Burnaburiash I will also take Isin from the sea land of King Eagamil, campaigning against him with his son Ulamburiash while he is away warring in Elam. How rude! Babylonia, renamed Korduniash, ancient Sumer, even Marie and Hannah, northwest, he will reign over it all. And we will finish this off with a burial. Amenhotep I dies after extending Egypt's grasp over Nubia southward, Libya westward, and nowadays Palestine, Canaan back then. When campaigning towards Nubia, from which Egyptians employed lots of archers, expeditions will go from Elephantine, Abu back then, an island on the first cataract of the Nile. on which the fortified city of Sunt sat. It was probably fortified as soon as the 4th millennium BC, mind you. We are reminded here that river navigation was extremely important for Egyptian logistics and movement. Under the New Kingdom, it would only take 9 days to cover the 600 kilometers, 373 miles, between Memphis and Thebes. After Amenhotep I comes Thutmose I. That's a story for another day. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video for the continuation of history and our discovery of war and the Shang dynasty in China. Bye bye.